Apple has not been very strong in AI. So yeah, honestly, I think it was a bit of a surprise, which is why, as you mentioned, Apple's stock popped a little bit. And despite all the talk around China, the net sales in China were up 4% to over 15 billion, as you mentioned. So it was a pretty strong quarter for Apple.
Let's talk a bit more about the rebound in sales in the iPhone in China. After a number of quarters, the company got the boost that it really needed. What do you think led to that?
I mean, I don't think it's fair to analyze just one quarter. Apple's,
Yeah.
working on China like all its markets. I would say usually these increases are not so much individual unit sale increases, they're price increases. As Apple releases more and more expensive devices, that results in higher revenue for individual products. I don't know if they broke down to individual unit sales, so I wouldn't say necessarily that iPhone sales were up.
Interesting. And our company CEO, Tim Cook, did say part of the reason for these good numbers, people trying to get ahead of Trump's tariffs and purchasing iPhones. We have seen that a lot going on. Could this take some of the luster off these shiny numbers?
Yeah, that is a fair point. It's possible that that quarter that just passed did include the tariff trade war rhetoric, and for sure, we'll see after a few more quarters if this was just a blip, an increase because people were out there trying to get iPhones before a larger price increase, or if this was just part of the ups and downs that you can expect from quarter to quarter anyway.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it moves forward. And one thing that really kind of jumped out to me was Apple services also up significantly. So the challenge is going to be for the company to maintain that with all of the competition out there.
Yeah, Apple has been working to shift towards services for a number of years now, and if you look at the revenue from just services, it's been on a very steady trajectory up, whereas iPhone sales are kind of always up and down from quarter to quarter. So eventually, if Apple continues on this trajectory, services will eclipse the iPhone. It's hard to say exactly when, but I would say 5-10 years, assuming nothing else changes.
Right.
And that would be a massive shift for Apple because since the release of the iPhone, maybe a few years after the release of the iPhone, Apple became the iPhone company. And by that, I mean, that was its major revenue driver. Everything else was kind of rounding errors. So it could be that the services will become the main driver for Apple.
Yeah, and I kind of want to pick up on what you're talking about, putting these numbers in perspective, because the last time the company had it so good was December of 2021. Now, overall, Apple is the second worst performer this year among the so-called Magnificent Seven. Its stock, we will chronicle that, down 15%. What are some of the company's biggest challenges? And when we talk about these challenges, kind of put into perspective this recent earnings info, because it's good news, but it's one quarter.
Yeah, I mean, Apple's challenges can be summarized by AI, and AI. Apple does not have an answer on what it should be doing around AI. And usually Apple's strategy is to see what everyone else is doing and then make a refined version of whatever the market is heading towards. You can see that with, even the release of the iPhone. It was not the first smartphone, their release of various products, right?
Right.
With AI, things are moving so quickly that Apple just looks really, really far behind, right? Siri has been a joke for forever now. And Apple has tried, and not even just tried, but promised to release significant improvements around AI. And Apple Intelligence has become a joke. Frankly, the Siri improvements that it has promised, it has not delivered on. And meanwhile, it seems like all its competitors, whether we're talking about startups like OpenAI and Anthropic, whether we're talking about Amazon and Google, they're racing ahead. And so it just seems like if Apple can fix that, the narrative will shift, because ultimately it's an optics question, right?
Yeah. So let's talk more about that, because what are its options right now if it's that far behind? Because it's going to be difficult to make up that space. It's like doing a 400-yard race and spotting someone about 100 yards.
Yeah, I mean, Apple has a few options. One, it can start putting more resources towards that division that's struggling, and it's been making some shifts around there. The other is it can make a large acquisition. Apple has an incredible cash pile that it's not kind of just sitting on, and it has been sitting on for decades. And Apple doesn't. The problem is that Apple doesn't like making large acquisitions. I think the last acquisition that Apple made that was sizable was Beats, and that was a couple billion if I remember correctly. So very small compared to some of its other competitors, the acquisitions that they make. So Apple could break its own rule and make a large acquisition. They could buy anything from OpenAI to they can afford it really. All these various startups, or even something smaller like a Perplexity has been floated. That can make a lot of sense. Now, if they do that, the proof is in the pudding. Will they be able to integrate it correctly? Will they be able to actually leverage that acquisition? What many people forget is that most acquisitions are not actually successful. So there's a lot riding on that. Acquisitions aside, Apple just needs to really invest in this. Whether even if it doesn't acquire a whole company, it really needs to start poaching a lot of talent and really putting a lot of effort into AI if it's going to continue to be the Apple that we expect.
Yeah, that's a crowded field right now, and a lot of money floating around. Emil, thanks so much. I certainly appreciate your insight.